We'd like to welcome everybody to Cybervets 2.0, supporting active duty military transitioning to the cybersecurity workforce. And it's certainly our pleasure to be with you here today and with this virtual presentation, which is a new for us and a new one. And I hope that it's something that is interesting and informative for you. So thank you for attending and being with us today. My name is Shane Gallagher. I'm with SG Systems Consulting. Also with us is Aaron Burnett. He is the federal lead for this program, which is under the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. We also have John Dill, who is the lead instructor and facilitator for the program. And then we are fortunate enough to have one of our what we call Cybervets, who's a current participant in the program with us, Alyssa Morris, who will also get a chance to speak with us about her experiences. So again, welcome and thank you for being with us today. And we will go ahead and move on. Next slide. What we'll talk about is a little bit of background and scope from a very high level of this program, how it started and where it's at. We'll move from there into a little bit of lessons learned from our first iteration and how that led to the redesign of where we're at with our current model. Going through that, we'll talk a little bit about what that means from our training to employment pipeline, where we're at with our current status, what challenges we have. Then, as promised, our Cybervet, Alyssa, will get to talk with you just for a moment about her experiences. We'll move into potential employers, and following that, we have questions and answers, which isn't on the agenda, but we'll have a little bit of time for that, we hope, at the end of this as well. Unless there's questions throughout, and if we see that and it makes sense, we'll try to address those as they come up. So with that, I would go to the next slide. And I want to turn the time over to our federal lead, Mr. Aaron Burnett, to talk about the high-level approach of this program.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Shane, Dr. Gallagher. My name is, again, Aaron Burnett. I'm the federal lead for the cybersecurity training program. I'll give you a little history of how the program got started. It was in collaboration with not just CMS, but Veterans Administration and Office of Personnel Management, OPM. This program was started in June of 2018 and was a year-long program. A one-year program that we started as a non-paid work experience program, which is what a VA officially calls it. We wanted to bridge the gap, and as most of our professionals know, that there is a shortage of cybersecurity in the industry, and not in the just in the federal space, but also in the private sector space. Our goal was to try to bridge that gap, as I stated, and gain the competencies and experience to work in our federal cybersecurity space. So in our program, in our pilot program, and it still continues to be a pilot program, we graduated 7 veterans in Army, Navy, Marines, and Air Force represented in that initial pilot program. And we were successful in graduating those veterans. Our partners plan to continue the improvements, and we learned from this program, this one-year-long program, to be able to, as you'll see, redevelop this program into the current program that pilot program that we have today. Again, our long-term goal was to create a federal cybersecurity training program of excellence, what we call CO, and build a nice framework, which I believe most of our cybersecurity professionals and industry knows what that nice framework is. Next slide, please. This is our roadmap. Our roadmap is what I just talked about, where we were and what we tried to accomplish going forward in our next, what we call 2.0. We began with a small cohort with the spiral model. We learned from all of our, not only lessons learned, but also our senior leadership, feedback from our senior leadership to create this perpetual model and to create instructional gates, which is what the cybersecurity trainee coming into the program, veterans, must pass to complete the program. We took a year to recreate this program, to redevelop not just the curriculum, but also what we call a feeder program, which it was Veterans Administration that we talked about before. But now we found and talked to a lot of different areas and agencies, and we came up with a DoD Skill Bridge partnership, which gave us a lot of advantages, which you'll hear about later on. And this supports the training modernization initiative and also provides internal training opportunities going forward. It's scalable and it's repeatable. And that's what I really want you to keep in mind as we drill down a little further. And I'm going to turn this over to my next slide, to my partner.
Thank you, Aaron. And to that end, I'll spend a couple of just a little bit talking about the concept and structure of the program. This is built on a problem-based model and using what we call challenges that are developed across three main areas of cybersecurity within the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare and Medicaid Services, which are operations, compliance, and policy. And that also includes the privacy issues as well. So we have a platform that you're going to hear about a little bit later that is virtual and supports us with problem-based learning. It's called Escalate. And when John, or JT as he goes by, will talk to you, he'll mention that as well. Now, underlying this program is what we call a cognitive apprenticeship. And those of you in academia and other areas in education will probably recognize that term. But we are very constructivist in the way we think about learning and how we support, how we facilitate problem solving and model it. And so this is really based on this notion of the cognitive apprenticeship. Within that, we have a model that really supports mentoring and collaboration and cooperation. And we're going to show you how that works a little bit as well. The idea is that we want to transition to building communities of learning and transition those into communities of practice. We have small cohorts are built on several small ones. That's also going to be illustrated. We initially wanted 4, we actually have 3. And then we're bringing in, and cohort is used loosely. It's a small learning group, but it's easy to manage using the term cohort. But we have folks starting every 8 weeks as well. This is all I will show in a couple of slides down. We call this a talent development model that's perpetual, and with the nice roles that are built in, we have really thought about that from the beginning, how this integrates with the framework. Our ultimate goal is preparing these folks for potential employment in the federal workforce. That's our measures of success. Are we getting them prepared, and are they actually getting employed? And that's when, that is the ultimate measures for us. And as you heard from Aaron, developing into this, hopefully a center of excellence within the federal space moving forward, that can support many agencies, hopefully as it scales, not just Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services. Next slide. So we are integrating NICE, and how we're doing is we have two primary roles that is supported. We have the cyber defense analyst, and then we have the information system security manager. Now, it's not really manager. It's really more the ISSO, Information Security Systems Officer. They share many of the same job tasks and KSAs. It isn't particularly called out within the framework. So that's the closest one that we label as we look at those. Our idea is to create, hopefully, generalists, cyber generalists, so that they have a really good foundation when they graduate from this or complete the program of both operations and compliance and policy, as we mentioned, those three domains, so that they may also understand, hopefully, which area they would like to pursue in their careers as they transition, in our case, from the military into the civilian workforce, because it gives an opportunity to look at and work within the broad spectrum of what analysts do within a SOC, but also then what they do when you're looking at policy and management and so forth. So that's how we are embedding these roles moving forward. We don't have every KSA covered, but we do address them pretty well, I think. Next slide. We had some lessons learned from 1.0. We had to shorten it to 6 months from a year. We needed to work on a feeder program that really supported the needs of this, and we were initially with VA. So that's how we moved to where we're at now, and we're going to talk about that using the Skill Bridge program. The gates, anyway, looking at the rigor of the program, how we work with employment ready and securing FTE positions, and so forth. So there were several of these that made sense that we had to look at and address, and we did that. And so that what we want to talk about is beyond that into where we're at now. We call Cybervets 2.0. Next slide. So this is about the redesign and the current model now, and we are in operation. First of all, we needed a feeder program that helped identify the folks that really needed to be in here. We searched and searched, and we came across with the DoD Skill Bridge program. You're going to hear about that a little bit later from JT as he talks how we use it. But it's the crux of supporting this transition from military to civilian, being able to train and have them being supported financially while they do this, because it's a 6 months, almost not a leave of absence, but a 6 months PCS, meaning temporary duty. And it's not something that you can easily do without having financial compensation, which is what our problem was in the first year. So that's important. As we move on down, I'm going to talk about how it integrates with current professional development in the CMS, what our curriculum model is, how the cohorts line out, the scope. Then we'll get to the day-to-day, and JT is going to talk about what he does and how he facilitates. We'll move on down to what technologies we're using, because we're now virtual, and a little bit about this registration to statistics and how we're evaluating. So with that, let's go to the next slide. And let's talk about how this integrates within and why it's here as a part of Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services. So there's an initiative that CMS has right now called Training Modernization within the Information Security and Privacy Group. And it is looking at various ways to enhance professional development, look at skills gaps. You know, how do they really leverage different things going on within the organization to support the folks that are working there. Cybervets not only has implemented to help transitioning veterans as a primary goal, but also as a part of this, because once there's learning activities and challenges and things that are scheduled on a repeating basis, it could also be leveraged by others. So we looked at that and said, okay, it's actually a part of this three-pronged approach to modernization. So it's not only leveraging or supporting transitioning veterans, but it's leveraging that existing program in order to make the whole organization better. So it's and that's part of what the ROI is for CMS. One of it is to obviously to increase the overall workforce in cybersecurity, but it does help them. And we do it by external, training and hiring, potentially bringing ideas, bringing in folks that have trained, bringing the vets in on board as that makes sense. But then this internal professional development model, leveraging it for that, for new employee training, and then it becoming an integral part of this training modernization initiative. So that's multi-pronged. Next slide. That brings us to who the training audiences are. We have primary transitioning veterans. Secondarily, current ISGPG personnel, which is Information Security and Privacy Group within CMS, within Office of Information and Technology, and then also Office of Information and Technology personnel and others. So how do we do this? Let's go to the next slide. I'm going to talk about the model. So we call this professional talent development model, and it's once it's started, it's designed not to necessarily have to stop, because it keeps rolling. So I'm going to explain how this works and why this slide is the way it is. We've got a spiral out. So this is a spiral model. Starting from the inside, we have, and I think I might be able to, yeah. I don't know if you can see my cursor or not. Starting from the middle with initially looking at challenges and so forth within the operations domain. As you spiral through, it moves into compliance and policy, and it moves back into operations, moves back into compliance policy, and then back into operations and so forth, as they finally get ready to finish the program. And as it spirals out, everything gets more challenging and harder within the same general problem spaces. One of the things that is an output of this program as well is passing, getting certified for the GSEC, which is a standard, fairly standardized exam that is across, it's trained through from a SANS perspective, but it's GIAC certification. And that's a security cert that isn't that easy to come by, but by the time they're finished with this program, they most likely will be able to pass that and have that on their resume as well. So the important thing also here is that we have dates. This is a cohort 1, starts in August and spirals out through these different dates. It's 6 months total. We have 6 weeks in operations, 2 weeks in compliance and policy, 6 weeks in operations, 2 weeks in compliance and policy, till they actually finish the spiral. At that point, we consider them employment ready. Now, what's happening though is we have another cohort that's also starting and 8 weeks offset from the first one. So just to point out something, we have 6 weeks and we have 2 weeks. That's 8 weeks. So when you come down to the next 6 weeks, that's when the next cohort starts. You're in the general same domain area. Let's go to the next slide and I'll show you the difference. It's offset. So this is the same model. Starts 8 weeks later, going through the same thing. But what's lined up is all of the activities within operations, learning. Operations are hard skills. If I haven't said that, it's things like you're doing a lot of network understanding. You're doing Linux. You're doing. You'll be doing reverse engineering. You'll be getting into eventually forensics, malware analysis, pen testing type of things. We're also putting in training to help get you through the certification. So when we say SEC 401, that's a SANS training course that prepares you for this GSEC cert. So we have a lot of things going on that's happening. The reason that this is offset here is because at the 8 weeks, cohort 2 comes in and they start to be in the middle again. And there's not only working collaboratively with each other, but they are working across groups. So the intention is that we also work cooperatively so that you can learn from each other. Those that have been through this can provide insight and support and help to those that are just starting. And the problem spaces are fairly aligned so that as everything kind of moves through the operations into the compliancy pieces and back in the operations, no matter which cohort you're in, it just depends on the level that you're at. And as another cohort comes on, it will do the same thing. So that's the idea here. We really want to reinforce this notion of cooperative or collaborative, first of all, working with each other to help solve problems jointly, social negotiation, a lot of things like that, but also cooperation so that we have those that have different skill sets coming in and different levels of skills help each other in understanding and learning from each other at different levels, pulling each other along that way, and also in a when you get into some of the teams and think about it, that you have a lot of roles. So you'll kind of, as you differentiate a little bit into roles, cooperative learning becomes really important as well. So we want to foster both of those as we go through this model. Again, it's 6 weeks long. Let's go to the next slide. And we have, for the first year, 5 cohorts outlined. The first one started the 1st of August. The 5th one will be over in September 22nd of 2021. The red line says we're here. We started first cohort, we started a second cohort. We're getting ready to start a 3rd cohort. So the waterfall simply says, okay, this is the starting date when they come in, beginning and end dates, we pick up 3 or 2 or however folks as they come in. They're offset in the learning activities based upon the model that I previously went through. So what this does is allow us to have about I'm going to say the January, February timeframe, we'll probably have up to 8 folks in here at once. The total throughput of this is about 10 people. I have a slide, I can show that a little bit later. So we are not trying to have a large throughput, okay? And the reason we're not is because this is built back to the model again. This is built on what we call a fire team. You're going to see that illustrated when JT talks. There's been research and classes, or I should say pilot programs within the Department of Defense that have worked in this model that has shown the effectiveness of using fire teams, being immersive and doing a problem-based approach. The team size really shouldn't get above about between 6 to 8 people at once. We're just offsetting the way we're organizing and running the team. So there's also another reason, because we do want folks to be placed, and placement is very important. If there's too many going through, then there's potentially no place at the end for folks to get hired. So, we have to temper that right now. The way this would scale is that we have multiple teams, and that's potential for future. But at this point, this is, we call it still a pilot, the 2.0, and we're working through this. And then that, as we think about the scalability, will be something that's taken under consideration and how we want to go through with it. Next slide. The scope, I mentioned a little bit about that, but I wanted to have another scope slide. So you saw the curriculum scope, kind of the scope and sequence of things that are actually being taught. After we do onboarding and pre-testing and qualifying of who's in it, you're going to go through where we say operations. Those are the topics. We've got intro to the SOC. We've got analytical methods. All these things are really being done in the first 4 weeks through challenges and problems. We have other folks within the organization that step in and help as well. So we have this one on week 6 called SOC Tools and Tour. So folks from the Security Operations Center or SOC that actually work at CMS take over and help support and take them through what they're doing, how to do it, what the tools are, and so forth. So we have that happening all the way through this as well. Then they move into policy and in compliance. So we have some of the tools there, and then back into operations. So part of this, and you can see week 10, 11, and 12, we're working through SANSEC 401, first 3 books to get working towards the GSEC certification. And we just keep moving on down. Some of the other topics you'll see, vulnerability analysis tools, forensics malware analysis tools, pen testing, down to this 23 and 24 where there's a role called Cyber Risk Advisor within CMS. It's a federal position that doesn't necessarily exist in other organizations in the federal space so much. It's probably equivalent to an ISSM. But that's one of the last things that we go through is supporting that. And then at the very end of this, they will have hopefully pass the GSEC. They will also have several opportunities to do practice exams with the GSEC that we take various data points all the way through this. I'll talk about that in a minute too. Next slide. We integrate, I mentioned we integrate with ISPG. So there's a few points we do that. They're in color, and I'm going to move ahead a little. I've taken a little bit longer, so I want to move ahead. So we have different points where they come in and out, but not for the whole thing. So the folks that actually work at ISPG have what we call integration points that supports. Next slide. That supports various aspects of their interests. I'd like to now move over to JT and let him talk about the day-to-day and the learning model, and we'll move on down. So JT.
All right, thank you. My name is JT Dill, so I'm kind of the facilitator. I try not to say teacher because when we approach this program, we want to make sure that how we run this program is primarily a problem-based type environment. So what I mean by that is we try to facilitate vice teach. And so because within cybersecurity, there's so many ways to learn a certain concept that we try not to give them so many of the answers, so much like the Victorian style model of teaching where we stand in front of a whiteboard, we whiteboard all day, then they take the multiple choice test on Friday and we move on to a whole another subject. We don't do any of that. So it's pretty much hands-on training. We give them a problem, throw them on a problem from day one. And this is really coming from a particular model of, so I spent majority of my 23 years in the Navy. Majority of that was at NSA and at Cyber Command, and there's a philosophy of some of the world's best hackers are really built in their own basements, and so we want to give them the confidence that they can learn this stuff on their own. So if I say the word teach, we pretty much we teach them to teach themselves, and so then we amplify that with other courses that will assist them into maybe learning that a little bit. So we kind of look at it as look at cybersecurity as a great big spider web. There's a couple strings you can get in on TCP/IP, or maybe learn a little policy, and then you have this whole big web of areas that you can go to. And so we kind of help navigate as much as we can. And so thank God most of this is virtual, because Alyssa is going to strangle me a couple times, because of the fact that they went off on a tangent and went down a rabbit hole, and they came back and they were pretty much researching the wrong areas. And so my favorite saying in that is, well, yeah, you spent 3 hours researching that and it wasn't the right thing, but did you really waste 3 hours? Because they learned a new concept, and then when that particular subject might come up later, they have a little bit more common knowledge of it. But again, we're trying to give these folks a lot of information in an amount of 6 months. Anywhere from reverse engineering to web exploitation to Windows, Linux exploitation, traffic analysis, network forensics, malware repurposing, pen testing, et cetera, all in a matter of 6 months. And so what we want them to do is be able to understand a concept, get it, and really we try to adapt to their learning style or their learning model. Some people don't like people writing on whiteboards. Some like YouTube. Some like their own research. And so we try to adapt to their learning models really, and kind of mentor them through the process. And it really is learning through frustration. And so there's been many times that they've almost wanted to punch the screen, but at the end of it, once they got the concept, it's really built into how they approach the problem. Next slide, please. And next slide. So what does our day-to-day look like? And what we try to do with this, and I'll get into this just in just a second, that being retired military myself and then having the cohorts go through, what we try to do is we try to instill some of the military disciplines that they already have. And then try to help them then transition that into the civilian sector. So we change a little bit of we don't change a little bit how we did things in the military. Each morning we do a stand-up, or as we call it, a muster or formation. We go through the problems. We go over, we're going over today's mission. We're going over objectives for the day. And then orientation, say that this task is this way, go forth, conquer. And then we send them off to do their mission, AKA the problem. We kind of frame the problem, let them assess the situation, research research it a little bit, come back with how they're going to do their approach plan, and then go forth and attack the problem. And then a lot of times they don't get it the first time. And so then this is where we reassess. This is what I've done. This is what I know. This is what I don't know. This is what I've researched. And then that's kind of where we facilitate them to a little bit to now go back onto the problem. So do we go send them over to a shoulder surf with somebody that's more expert in that area to kind of help them a little bit? Or do we kind of go give them a little bit more breadcrumbs for them to go out and do research? And then we also provide coaching one-on-one if they're not getting a particular subject. We use a platform, a training platform called Escalate. It's basically, if you've ever played Capture the Flag, that's basically what it is. I would like to say is, we have thousands of people on this platform, and right now we actually have all 6 of our candidates in the top 50 of those. And you're talking about one of our candidates, or one of our cohorts, is actually a diesel mechanic, where we actually had to walk him through the process on how to hook a Cat5 up into a wireless router. And so now he's doing reverse engineering, and the same thing with cohort 1. They are. I almost think they're breaking the top 30 for cohort number one. So, and you're talking out of thousands of people, and most of these people on this platform are cybersecurity experts. So a lot of information, very highly dedicated and motivated individuals. I'm pretty proud of them. Next slide. So kind of our day-to-day virtual. It kind of. We were supposed to start, but with COVID kind of pushes us back a little bit. So again, just like military, we had to adapt and overcome. So we did that via virtual. So we actually had to change a lot of the way we do things. And so we actually, how do we share our information? How do we video conference? How do we do breakout sessions? How do we get cohort 1 mentoring cohort 2 over here while all in 2 different classes? The sharing of information. Next slide. Giving them challenges and problems in labs and letting them go forth. And then if someone's having a hard time in the evening, they want to connect with another cohort member, go over that. They have that access where they probably wouldn't be able to do that, and so much if we were here physically. But and then again, like I mentioned, our challenges through our training platform Escalate. Next slide. Okay, so how do we get them training to employment pipelines? So basically, we utilize a program called SkillBridge. Shane mentioned that earlier. I actually was a SkillBridge participant about 3 years ago. And so basically, I'm spending the last 6 months, up to the last 6 months of my military career doing an internship. And so next slide. This is the SkillBridge website. So basically what I like to call it, I like to call it boots to business, and our jobs. And part of that is not just translating and giving them cybersecurity training and or experience or education, but really it's also assisting them transitioning from the military, which most of these folks have known that's the only thing they've ever known. Our cohorts are built in between first termers to retirees, from E4s to Army officers. We have one or two midterm folks that are getting out in the middle of their career. So it's a pretty vast group of folks that each person brings a very unique talent to the quote fire teams. Next slide, please. What we also try to do is when we transition, we also help to give them guidance and mentorship, taking them from the military and assisting them on how to adapt to the civilian sector, assist them with resumes, help them building their network, all the way down to kind of selecting their cybersecurity field, because the cybersecurity field is pretty vast. And so when we expose them to everything cybersecurity, it helps them understand that this is exactly the area that I want to do. And then also, most importantly, it exposes them to areas that they just don't want to do within cybersecurity. So once they have a good understanding of what areas they want to go in, we kind of help give that extra mentorship. We help them build networks within that particular area, maybe a little bit of extra training. So what this slide also does is that I never really expected this, where in the beginning of this, and I don't know if it's due to COVID or not, but I wasn't expecting a whole lot of folks to apply for this program. But once we started virtual and we started getting going, we put this online around, I think, April or May or timeframe of this past year. And so far we have, and these numbers are up to about 155 people interested into the program, pretty much from all services, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, Army, and Army National Guard. And so that's our makeup. Next slide. Okay, that's my piece. So I want to turn that back over to Shane.
Thanks, JT. And we're going to be real brief because I want to get to Alyssa talk to you for a minute. This just shows a little bit of throughput and where we're going with this. We have, upon graduation, we go to contractors as a buffer, potentially, not always. And then we're looking at CMS and other agencies as our pipeline. So we've been thinking about this quite a bit. And hopefully we'll get more data around that as we go through the cohorts. Next slide. You might be familiar with the Kirkpatrick evaluation model. That's what we're using right now. It's under continuous evaluation, and we have formative eval, and we'll do some summatives. We mostly on level 1 and level 2, and I'm not going to get into this at this point because we need to move on just a little bit. So next slide. And I want to move on right now to turn the time over to Alyssa Morris. We call this One Cybervet Story, and she will spend a few minutes talking with you about her experiences. Over, Alyssa.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hello, everybody, and good afternoon. My name is Alyssa Morris. A little bit about me and my background. I'm an active duty Marine serving at Marine Corps Base Quantico here in Virginia. I worked as an 0111, or as most people call it, administrative specialist. I worked in ops as an operations and COIC at Marine Corps Embassy Security Group. Now I am a Cybervet at CMS. It's a super awesome experience. I'm sure many of you are wondering why I participate in the program and what my outlook is like as a Cybervet. And I hope I answer all your questions. I made a decision in the last year of my enlistment that I wanted to pursue cybersecurity. I'm pursuing a degree in cybersecurity, so this is something that I am really passionate about. And I knew that I wanted to get out of the Marine Corps. I really wanted to serve my country in a different capacity. So with this in mind, I heard about the DoD Skill program and really hoped that there's a program out there for me within DoD Skill. When I first looked in January, there were no cybersecurity programs available in my area or online, much less any program that was tailored to veterans that had no experience. A few months later, I looked back on the DoD Skill website, and CMS Cybervets was a program available, and I reached out almost immediately. I found out shortly after talking to leadership and being interviewed that this was a cybersecurity program tailored to veterans that had little to no experience in the field, and it was perfect for me. And then I was later added into the cohort, the first cohort for the DoD Skill program, or Cybervets 2.0. The first 3 months I would describe really as boot camp. I went through Marine Corps boot camp, and it was not nearly as hard as the first 3 months of this program. The first month is really breaking you down, getting you used to terminology, methodologies, and things used in cybersecurity and in cybersecurity operations. And then the second month and third month are really building you back up. We took a minor course to learn the basics about Linux security and applied network security. We then later worked with the SOC analysts to learn about Splunk and what their jobs are day to day, which transitioned us into compliance and policy with ISSOs and CRAs within CMS, who taught us more about CFAX, and we were briefing our assigned systems to the CISO and other leaders within ISPG and OIT later that week. So by week 2, I was already briefing a security system to upper level leadership, which to me is amazing to learn that quickly. In the third month, we sat down with the CKIC security engineer, really pulling together everything we had learned thus far, and then transitioning into the SANSEC 401 books for our GSEC certification. This month, we are doing more of those things, learning more about CFAX, learning more about network security and Windows Enterprise Security. And later this month, we'll be doing an event with Cyberfire that is held by the Department of Energy National Laboratories. And doing so much more in the program. So far, it has been a great experience. My teammates, my classmates have been amazing. We reach out to each other, the other cohorts, we have a competition between ourselves to really be the best that we can be. And CMS has amazing leadership, amazing professionals. They are really dedicated to my success in this program. And I've never had anything like that, even in my military career. My hope after this program is over is to pursue a career in cybersecurity, either as a federal employee or government contractor. And being in this course has really brought me a lot of joy and makes me excited for the opportunities to come. I know that I have an edge heading into the workforce after my military career, and that gives you peace of mind. Also, this DoD Skill program comes to no cost to me. I didn't have to use my GI Bill to participate in this course, so financially it helps me in the future. One less thing that I have to worry about. So I'm really happy that I got to share my story with you, and if you have any questions, I will be here. Shane, back to you.
Thank you, Alyssa. Next slide. We appreciate your insight. A few potential employers that we have right now that we've lined up, and from our first cohort as well, from the federal government, we have folks from industry. We're looking at other agencies such as Social Security, VA, different folks that are interested and would like to work with us. And possibly some of you that are here now that might be interested in hiring a cyber vet. We would love to have more contact with you and talk with you later. We think that you would have a very well-trained generalist to start with. We can't say enough about folks like Alyssa that are going through this and the amount of work and dedication they put into it. So we consider this a huge win in supporting veterans transition and fulfilling a need that is really great, not just in the government, but across industry. And you know, that need is only getting more and more, growing more and more as we speak. And with that, are there any more questions? I've been answering some. And I'm trying to, I have a few. It says, sufficient positions hiring. How large a pipeline could you scale up to? I'll just answer this live and say probably, you know, it depends. It's going to be agency by agency. So, and how many fire teams we can put in on this model. We have about a 10 throughput. So you can just multiply it. We'd have to have support per team. So, you know, you could easily say, well, with 2 or 3 FTEs, you can multiply it by, you know, by that number, and maybe that could be the throughput. But we're looking at data like that now as we do strategic planning. Any idea of the overall cost value, overall value cost wise that SkillBridge provides for the courses themselves? I'm not real sure what that means. Overall value cost wise that SkillBridge provides for the courses themselves. I will say this, that SkillBridge has provided motivated and qualified, well, we've vetted them, but mostly very highly motivated and qualified folks up front that are able to do this with the DoD support for 6 months because they're supporting transition. So to that end, I think SkillBridge is invaluable. To the first time we did this, we did not use it. We used VA and we used the non-paid workforce or non-paid experience program. It was very, very difficult. It was also a year long, but we had a different level of financial support that each person could have, and that was very difficult. So this evened everything out, put everything on a way that we can manage the pipeline, and folks didn't have to worry about that. So we wanted to take that out of the equation. Any feel for cost quality comparison for the program versus typical government hiring process? Well, this isn't a hiring process, but what it does do is provides the opportunity for qualified personnel to hire. And I will say this though, the folks we're getting, most of them probably fit the hiring authorities that exist within agencies that can hire veterans for I think up to an 11 or GS 11 or 12 without having to go through the traditional hiring process. So there's a lot of value there, as well as knowing that there's a baseline level of understanding and knowledge and skills that have come out of this. So I think that in itself, that consistency is probably of large value. Is how I'd answer that. I think we're a couple minutes over. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here and being a part of this today. We appreciate it, and hope the rest of the conference goes very well.